I bought this dress. It's too big because it's a size large. I need to take off 2.5 inches, but the fabric was great and it's lined and I couldn't purchase it for this amount of money. So let's figure out how to fix it. So normally you would take it from the sides to make it even on both sides, but there's an invisible zipper. You could take it down the princess lines in the bodice, but they're top stitched and I'm afraid I would rip the fabric on the bodice. The next thing would be to look at where are the princess seams in the back, which are usually where the back straps are, but there's no seam there, so that's not that good of an idea. The next option though, obviously, is to take a look at the back seam. So there's nothing in the bodice, but we could make a back seam that it continues into the skirt. I think that's going to be the plan of action. So I'm going to rip out the tag and, oh, see, I bought it at H&M. That's why it was a great deal. It was a $79 dress that I got for $14.99. And I'm not too concerned if I put a little hole in the lining because that's actually going to be in the section that's going to be sewn together and cut off eventually. So I need to take this in 2.5 inches and I'm going to mark from the center line on each side 1.25 for the total of 2.5 inches. And then once I get that even, I'm going to mark down approximately 6.5 to 7 inches because that's where I want the intake to stop. And I will bring that down into the bottom seam. Oh, and this is the disappearing marker, so don't worry about the marks. The bodice and skirt were all sewn together, meaning the lining and the fabric were all sewn together, which made it really bulky. We're going to take that apart and just sew the fabric bodice and the fabric skirt together and the lining bodice and the lining skirt together. So I'm starting with the fabric of the bodice and the skirt together, and I'm sewing it at 1/4 inch, which is kind of a factory standard when you're going into fast fashion, and that's what this is, but we're following the original seam. Next, we're going to sew the linings together. Make sure you push down the fabric in between so that you don't get it caught when you sew it. It sometimes can slip behind, but just be mindful that it doesn't get caught as you're sewing it. And again, we're going to sew it 1/4 inch ends together and finish off the seam. So now it's time to take the garment in, as right now we were just putting it back together. You're going to take the fabric and you're going to match up the two blue dots and make sure that they're even and pull up the top of the fabric. Don't let it roll over because later on you need that seam allowance to sew it together at the top where you took it apart. Also, make sure that the two seams at the bottom of the bodice are going to be matching. Otherwise, the lines going across your back will not be equal and it will look kind of funky. And I'm going to go all the way down to, I had measured 6.5 inches from my bodice to where I want the intake to stop. Do the same thing on the lining, and as you can see, I blended in the bodice into the bottom of the skirt. Sew those lines that you drew starting at the top and going all the way down to the 6.5 or 7 inches, blending into the bottom seam of the skirt. After you sew the lining and the fabric, make sure that they are the same width at the top so that when you sew them together, one part is not going to be wider than the other. Now we're going to trim the seam. Be very, very careful. You're going to trim it to 1/4 of an inch away from where you sewed. Be really mindful about what is under the scissor as you're cutting. I have had many students who have trimmed a seam and ended up cutting part of their garment because they weren't paying attention to what they were doing. And the very last part is to finish the seam. I don't own a serger after 50+ years of sewing, but I am using a very narrow and short zigzag. So the top of the seam, flip it inside out, and you can see it looks really clean across the top. The seam blends into the skirt, and the cross stitching looks great too. And my dress fits me.